We are back with another Johnny Torch Live broadcasts. Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames and messieurs, we have episode 86, Agent 86 of the Johnny Torch Live broadcast today, and we are going to give you number 92 in our long line of Torch News roundups. Going to be a mashup today because we didn't do This Week in Comic Book Television on Saturday. Had things to do. As you may or may not know, I've got the convention circuit that I am on right now. And this coming Sunday, you can see me live and in person at KidsCon 2018 at the Radisson Hotel in Nashua, New Hampshire, from 10 to 5. And yes, I've got this all memorized. I'm not reading from any script. You can meet yours truly as I sign some comics, give away some swag. If you buy some comics, of course, I give away the swag, or you can just buy the swag. But one way or the other, there's plenty to go around. It's going to be a big show. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of attractions there, a lot of cosplayers and stuff. I'm hoping to take some pictures, maybe get them up here on probably on my Twitter page. Again, check the link in the description below. You can find my Twitter page there. Find out all the latest goings on if you're interested in my convention circuit. And check my webpage. The link is also in the description below. You can find out a lot of goodies there. You can find the free preview of the Adventures of Bullets Bourbon comics. You can see what I'm actually out there promoting. It's a lot of fun. It's a all ages book, which I say that, and I always say, I don't want irate parents to, storm the castle, as it were. I mean, you really should check out whatever you're going to give your kids to read, but it's an all ages book. I mean, as I said before, many times, I make the barometer sort of classic Star Trek. If you could do it on TOS, you probably can see it in the Bullets Bourbon book. It's not any graphic violence or anything. It's just PG rated stuff. Not to give away any spoilers, but if you could handle the ending of Avengers Infinity War, that's pretty much the most potent violence that you'll find in Bullets Bourbon. But check it out, and hopefully I'll see you there in Nashua, New Hampshire this Sunday, June 10th at the Radisson Hotel. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's go on to our first order of business. We're going to do the This Week in Comic Book Television segment first. Thankfully, it's going to be a relatively brief one because we've only got 2 shows to review. We're down now just to Supergirl and Legion, which I'm seriously thinking of abandoning Legion. I really have no use for this show anymore. But this episode, well, let me get the image up. I go to the trouble of getting an image here. Let me put it on the screen. Okay. We are going to have Cloak and Dagger coming out pretty soon, so I'm probably going to review the first couple episodes of that. But as it stands now, once Supergirl reaches the season finale and we do like a brief recap of all the shows, I'm not going to cover any more This Week in Comic Book Television because ratings-wise, it's not getting a lot of views, and it's taking a lot of time in my preparation where I have to make notes and stuff for these things that I'm not getting the justification to do it with the limited number of views that I got. All right, so on Legion, let's see what happened this week. We got Melanie smoking the wacky tobacco. I don't know exactly what that was supposed to be. She was smoking from the trunk of an elephant. That seemed to be the theme of this show. Again, when I say I complain about the show all the time, when I say that, it's basically because it's kind of a mess. The narrative is a mess. I mean, you really can't follow what's going on. Now, this whole episode is basically a flashback of what's been going on with Melanie. And I don't know, she confronts Oliver at gunpoint. This is possibly Farouk as Oliver. She sees herself when she was young, basically dreams of the past. She talks to the female Carrie because they're both named Carrie, I guess. The male Carrie remembers the mental implants that David suggested to him, as we see in this image here. So they realize they have to drop off a weapon in the blue car. I don't know what kind of car that is. I'm not good at that. Meanwhile, again, we go back to Lenny, one of my least favorite characters in television history. She gets wasted with some old cronies, I guess she knows. She sees David's sister, and they kind of have a back and forth off and on. David's sister, I don't remember her name, still wants her body back, apparently. Lenny tries to kill her, but of course she can't. Meanwhile, Carrie has dinner with Carrie in the restaurant, and they see Lenny getting into the car and disappearing. They have a tracker on it, though, which will probably come into play later. Lenny ends up in the desert where apparently Sid and David are, and Melanie contacts Oliver and knocks out Clark, which is kind of where we left the episode off last week. Again, I don't know. As part of the Torch News Roundup, I could also give this bit of information, though, where they have announced that Legion Season 3 is already a go. So apparently, ratings didn't affect this season all that well. I pretty much figured that this was going to have an adverse effect on the show getting renewed, seeing as how it's kind of crazy. I don't know. Some people like it better than the first season, I guess, but most people, I think, are kind of getting their attention span stretched thin with this season. I'm going to give this episode 2 stars out of 5. That's probably being very generous, but it kept my interest a little more than some of the other episodes of the season. I like Bill Irwin. He's pretty funny, and we got to see him a little bit. I'm going to give it 2 stars out of 5, and that's pretty much being generous. Okay, in contrast, Supergirl has shaped up pretty much, considering it's been a fairly blasé season. There really hasn't been a whole lot to cheer about in Supergirl. They're finally giving us some punching and some story dynamics that are actually interesting. In this one, they embrace the Silver Age concept of Argo City, and that Kara's parents are there in the protected dome that keeps them from poisonous gas or whatever. So where we left off, Kara and Mon-El were in the spaceship looking for the cure, which was some kind of black rock or something that would cure Sam. Meanwhile, Sam's possessed by Rain and getting immune to the kryptonite, but apparently Lena has a kill switch that she can really overdose Sam with at any time and probably give her a lethal dose that will not only keep her at bay here, but to kill her entirely. And Jean has the place rigged with explosives and so forth, and all that. Meanwhile, the subplot is Alex is dealing with a gunman who is trying to knock her off. Wynn acts like a jerk to Ruby. He's supposed to be babysitting her. Kind of a strange situation to put him in, seeing as how he pretty much acts like a 12-year-old all the time. So I kind of found it strange they decided to make him sort of the rough, I don't want to be bothered with kids type thing. But he eventually owns up to Ruby and makes up with her and talks about his dad being the toy man, and as you would expect, that kind of bonds them. Meanwhile, Kara and Mon-El get disguised. They find her mother there, Allura, and the set is made to look a lot like the set of Krypton from Superman the movie, Donner's Superman movie. That was pretty cool. One of the things I didn't like, of course, is that Zor-El is dead. They did give him credit. To their credit, they gave him credit that it was his brainchild, pretty much, is what saved them from, poison gas or whatever, and that the dome was being powered by the black rock, whatever it's called. So it's just like, the trait of this show is always the feminist agenda. We have to have Allura take center stage. We knew this from the beginning in the pilot. I even said in that very first review, it's so stupid the way they had Zor-El, basically, who was supposed to be in the comics a very brilliant scientist of his own standing, because he's the one that helped make the whole Argo City project a success. But they basically sidelined him for Allura the whole first season as well. And it's just, why the hostility towards men, strong, powerful men? The only strong, powerful men we've had so far on this show is Max Lord, who, they kind of gave him the sort of the frenemy thing at the end of last season. And of course, we've got Adrian Pasteur's uh, Morgan Edge, who's also sort of the rich white jerk guy that they would love to portray. So I mean, that kind of stuff irritates me, annoys me a little bit, but I like that they've done this. I like that they're going old school Silver Age with Argo City. This is the way I really wish the show would have begun, with her already having established Argo City and her leaving Argo City. But they kind of wanted to make it that, and I like the way they had that conversation between her and her mother, where both kind of felt like failures because neither sought to find the other. Alora kind of thought Kara died en route, and Kara definitely thought Alora died. So that was kind of nice. You can see the costuming is really nice there too. The belt that Alora's wearing is exactly the same as Kara's. So Mon-El ends up curing one of the native kids. I'm not sure really how that was going to tie into the plot. I don't know. Meanwhile, eventually Alora presents Kara to the council. One of the elders is the Krypton witch, quote unquote, that is controlling Rain and the world killers or whatever. So Kara asks for some of the black rock. Some of the elders are very much against it because it's their power source to keep them alive and well and surviving in space. But the Kryptonian witch there votes to give it to her, and they all basically follow suit. Alora ends up bidding Kara farewell, and this kind of is what is gonna bring us to the next episode, where Kara's gonna want to come back, but at least she has that opportunity, unlike Superman. Meanwhile, Alex and Jean try to draw out the assassin. Jean is taking the form of Alex. The assassin turns out to be an alien. Basically, the payoff for this storyline was Alex beats herself up for being reckless, and she really does a lot of cool Black Widow moves in this one. I got to hand it to. I mean, this is kind of more than what they showed us Alex could do in the past, so I kind of feel like it was out of place. But, she's supposed to be a trained agent. I mean, it's not really surprising that she can do that kind of stuff. But she beats herself up for being reckless, for not being able to do that when you have kids, and she still wants to have kids. Of course, they got to bring up Maggie again. Oh, duh. So the ending of it is the witch there casts a spell or something, frees Rain from her prison, which she was almost powerful enough to break free anyway. And Supergirl arrives in time from Argo City to apparently stop them, but end of show, and a fight ensues. So yeah, this is upping the excitement considerably. I really like what they did with Alora still being alive in Argo City. Disappointed that they killed off Zor-El. They could have recast him as well. I mean, they recasted the mother of Kara as, I can't remember her name. Erin, I'm forgetting her name. Cute kid. And she played Lois in Smallville. But kid. Yeah, she ain't a kid. She's playing Supergirl's mom. But she still looks great. Before I end up losing a track here, let me see. I'm going to give this one 4.5 stars out of 5. I'm feeling generous today. I'm going to say 4.5 stars out of 5. Half a star taken off for the death of Zor-El. But it really was a satisfactory episode. I like the way it's shaping up for the end of the season. Lena is kind of where she should be. I like the storyline here with Kara deciding whether she wants to go back to Argo now and live in Argo. And this is the point. See, I hate it. I hate it when other people bring this question up that I'm going to pose to you. But in the Arrowverse, everybody's always saying, why doesn't the Flash go get help from Supergirl? Why doesn't Supergirl go get help from the Flash? Why doesn't Arrow go get help from the Flash? Why doesn't Arrow go get help from Black Lightning? You notice that nobody asks Arrow for help. I don't know. I guess it's a testament to they know what they're going to get. They ask him for help. But anyway, the fact remains, it's their show. You know what I mean? It's their show. It's their city. You really can't afford to keep having them on call. They got other things to do. Flash has been busy with the Thinker. You can't have him running to save Oliver from Diaz or whatever. You can't do that. And you got to accept that. And if you're a comic book fan, you should understand that, because in every issue you read, it's not always going to contain crossover. Crossovers are special. So when you're reading Batman, he doesn't always call up Superman and say, gee, I'm having problems with the Joker. You want to show up? No, it's his job to take care of Gotham City, and he's doing it. Now, if they're going to take on a threat like Darkseid or something, yeah, of course, everybody gets together. But you can't really just, but in this case, I'm going to ask the question, where is Superman? I mean, where is he? Why doesn't he do something? That's a quote from Superman 2, in case you didn't know. But the point is, though, is if Kara is going to want to leave, she can, because Superman is already on the planet, and she is probably not giving up something that nobody else could do. You know what I mean? Superman is still there with all the same powers and the same strengths, and probably a little more experience, since he was already Superman by the time she showed up. So she probably could leave. And that, I think, is a good story hook. If they play it that way, they won't play it that way. They're not going to bring Superman back in. And Superman should be in this conversation. He needs to be in this conversation. They better not, wimp out and just give us the text like they did in the first season. He needs to be there, have a conversation with her. And if she decides she wants to leave, we've got to see why Superman thinks she should come back or should stay and not leave. It's an interesting quandary. These are the kind of writing questions you want to put in a show, especially about a hero as powerful as Supergirl. What is her dedication to Earth? Of course she's going to stay. She's going to be dedicated to Earth, but it makes her question these things. And why does she make that choice to stay on Earth? So it's not so much about is she going to stay on Earth, but why would she stay on Earth? Again, interesting questions. I hope they play with it the right way and they get Superman involved. They try to explain why she's more valuable on Earth to the people of Earth than just depending on Superman. All right, so 4.5 stars out of 5. I feel confident in that. That was a pretty good episode. Okay. So let's see. Checking out now. That is our This Week in Comic Book TV segment. And now we are going to get on to some of the news here, some of the news items that have come out in the past couple of days. All right, first off, there's the story about, I guess this is a rumor. We can treat this with a grain of salt, but the source is Variety's Justin Kroll. Justin Kroll says that Oswald Chesterfield Cobblepot will be the one to face the Caped Crusader in The Batman. So, in case you're forgetting exactly what's going on with that movie, nothing is going on with that movie. All we know so far is that Ben Affleck may or may not play Batman, probably not. Jake Gyllenhaal may or may not replace him as Batman, probably not. And Joe Manganiello is out as Deathstroke, possibly playing a small role, but he is not going to be the lead villain as originally planned. All right, according to Justin Kroll on Twitter, he said, "Take this with a grain of salt, as things are constantly changing in the DCEU, but I'm hearing the Penguin is possibly the choice to play the main villain in the Batman. Sources add, even if Matt Reeves, of course, being the director, sources add, even if Reeves decided to go another route, the studio could then make the main villain Penguin in Birds of Prey." So that's interesting. I kind of think that's more what's going to happen. They're probably going to have Penguin be like sort of the Mac Daddy that the Birds of Prey go up against, because they're another team that are not usually going up against heavy hitters like whatever Darkseid or whatever. They need a local threat like Penguin, and I think that's probably the way they're going to go. That's what this is going to amount to, probably. I would love to see the Penguin back as a Batman villain, just a main villain like he was in Batman Returns. Of course, you had Catwoman too, but I mean, I think Penguin was the main villain supposedly, because Catwoman just had a vendetta going on. It wasn't really lead villain material. But he is a great character that gets, overlooked because of the trappings. I think even back in Batman Returns, they tried to make something out of the character that he wasn't. They made him a mutant with, you know, long greasy hair and the balloon belly and stuff. I don't know. I never dug that look. I mean, as I said before, you know, Danny DeVito was fine, but the look, the background story they gave him was just horrible, really. All right, back to the quote. Reeves is still working on the script, so that could always change. But of the multiple Birds of Prey scripts submitted, one does have the Penguin as the main heavy. Either way, it seems WB wants this character cast in the universe sooner rather than later. All right, so that sounds pretty cool to me. I would like to see that. You know, the thing is they, you know, I think they shy away from some of the stuff like the trick umbrellas, the, you know, the pet penguins or whatever, you know, that he uses to commit crimes and stuff. That's the cool stuff, though. That's the stuff that, you know, all the old school fans want to see. I want to see them go back to that. I don't want him just to be some fat slob that just sits around smoking a cigarette and with maybe a top hat, which they even kind of get rid of the top hat these days. Like I like Robin Lord Taylor's, you know, what he's done with the Penguin, but even there, they still haven't graduated to the umbrella. They still haven't graduated to the top hat and monocle. They still haven't graduated to the cigarette holder. It's like that's the whole thing for the Penguin. That's the whole look. You know what I mean? You got to have that look down pat, like Burgess Meredith just perfectly did. And of course, he brought so much to the role with the waddle, with the laugh, and that's kind of some of the stuff that, you know, I miss that they're not really aiming for enough this day and age with the Penguin. So let's hope that things will look up for Oswald Cobblepot in the future, seeing as how he's only got one more season left on Gotham, which I think that show did raise his stakes a little bit. They raised his, you know, people gained respect for the character a little more because of Gotham, and that's a good thing. So now they're ready to, you know, apply the Penguin more properly, let's hope, in the future. All right, now we turn to Star Wars as usual. And before we ask the question, what are they going to do to ruin Star Wars now? They actually did something pretty smart here. Let's give them credit where due. It was announced that there is going to be a Boba Fett movie, a Boba Fett solo movie. Of course, we can't really put too much stake in what Disney says now because Disney has literally become the Warner Brothers. Disney is to Lucasfilm what Warner Brothers is to DC Entertainment. It's like they have the worst management going on there. They get the worst, just the worst. Let's just put it that way. They have the worst people running the show. All right. So according to the Hollywood Reporter, James Mangold of Logan fame will take the lead on a new Star Wars feature about the mysterious bounty hunter. Now, as you may remember, originally Josh Trank was attached to this film. The Boba Fett film was sort of in the works for a while. This is not really a new proposal, but back then it was considered to be a vehicle for Josh Trank. And of course, as things went, a lot of weird stories came out of Fan Four Stick. And that film turned out to be a disaster. And it was kind of recut against his will, Josh Trank. But seriously, there were a lot of, you know, stories coming out, people telling tales out of school about him being wasted and trashing his apartment and or his hotel or whatever, and basically just being, you know, a frat boy sort of. And you know, it may be true or false. I'm only reporting on what was said. But then the coup de grace was they basically pulled Boba Fett, pried it out of Josh Trank's hands. He was like ready to get going and start in production, and they just said no thanks, see you later. So I don't know. What do you think? Let's see. With James Mangold, see, I saw Logan, not crazy about it. That's the only thing I know that he did. It says he did Walk the Line. Oh yeah, that's the Johnny Cash film. Is that what that is? And Girl Interrupted. I seen some of Walk the Line. I guess I don't remember seeing the whole show, but the movie. I mean, but apparently he knows something about like westerns, and I guess that is sort of what, you know, the sort of the lone, you know, I don't want to say Lone Ranger, but, you know, sort of the lone figure that Boba Fett is supposed to be in the Star Wars universe. he knows something about that and can apparently bring that out in a Boba Fett movie. I don't know. Again, I wasn't that crazy about Logan. And can Boba Fett really carry a solo movie? A lot of people didn't think that we needed a solo film, Han Solo film. But I thought there was a lot of stories to tell about Han Solo. Are there stories to tell of Boba Fett? No, not really. Not really. I think Boba Fett should be in a solo sequel. And as my viewer last week when we were doing the solo commentary or the solo review, he said that they should put Han Solo, the character, in the Boba Fett movie. And that would probably be cool if that's sort of what they're doing, is making this the sequel to Han Solo. Because we also had suggestions that the Lando Calrissian Solo was going to come out. But I think really what they should do is, instead of focusing on these things, they should do sequels to Solo connected by not just focusing on Boba Fett, not just focusing on Lando Calrissian, focus on the smuggler circle. In Star Wars, there was always like three circles. There was the Jedi circle, which was the stuff that Luke, Obi-Wan, Yoda were doing. There was the rebellion and empire struggle, which was going on over here, which had to do with, the rebel forces, Admiral Akbar, Mon Mothma, General Madine, General Reekin, going up against, Grand Moff Tarkin, throw in Admiral Thrawn. That was the other side of it. And then there was the third faction, which was the smugglers. You had Han Solo, Lando Calrissian, Jabba the Hutt, Boba Fett. All of them existed in that world. So what they should do is they should make a connecting world that revolves around that and have stories that interconnect between Boba Fett and Han Solo, Jabba and Lando, and make them all in their corner of the universe. Make films that focus on their corners of the universe. And I think that would be really cool. That's what they should do with a Boba Fett movie, and not just make it, well, Boba Fett's going to go out for a big score. And I don't know. Is Tamira Morrison going to play him? I don't know. I mean, that would make sense because he's probably at the age still that Boba Fett was. I mean, if Boba Fett was whatever he was, 12 years old, I think he was in Attack of the Clones. And this is taking place, I don't know what, maybe pre A New Hope. He might even be a little older than Boba Fett was supposed to be. But what do you think? Let me know what you think about a Boba Fett solo movie. Do you think there's going to be anything interesting to say about Boba Fett, or should they, like I said, sort of encompass him in the smuggler's world and just do connected films that are in that world? Bring back Glover, Alden Ehrenreich. Bring them in and do sort of a connected universe of the smuggler's tales, pre A New Hope. All right, so let me know what you think in the comments below. All right, and lastly, it would be a fast show, but I'm afraid this is probably going to be a lengthy segment. Okay, so a lot of people are doing pieces on Solo's failure at the box office. And I see a lot of people making excuses, trying to uncover why the film underperformed, as they say. It's not really a great mystery, but I am going to look up the top 9 reasons, because there's a few other reasons, but honestly, some of them are just so ridiculous that it's not even worth my time to try to debunk them or whatever. Okay, so let's see. These are the top 9 excuses that we've been given on why Solo failed at the box office. Number 1, the number 1 reason that I found that most people say is Star Wars fatigue. Yes, Star Wars fatigue. That means that everybody out there is getting tired of Star Wars. Now, this kind of flies in the face of basically everything. Well, first off, let's take a look at the Marvel movies. The Marvel movies have been out for 10 years, and they're thriving to the point where now, instead of 1 or 2 movies out, there's 3 movies out a year. Now, that might not always be the case every year, but every Marvel film has performed admirably. If you just take a look at this year alone, Black Panther and Avengers Infinity War released 3 months apart from each other, both billion-dollar blockbusters. Now, this to me does not look like the cause of fatigue. When you can have multiple films in your franchise come out the same year and score big. Why isn't Marvel fatigued? Can it be the content, maybe? We'll get to that in a moment. But there is enough good stories to tell with enough different eras to cover to please everyone. Because we have a large sandbox to play in for Star Wars. We've got, like I said, there's the smugglers, there's the Jedi, there's the rebels versus the Empire. You can do pre episode 1 films. You can do the Knights of the Old Republic, which a lot of people are clamoring for, which I don't particularly like, by the way. You can do post Jedi stuff before. Some people are suggesting, if they're going to recast Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and stuff like that, and do post Jedi films, post Return of the Jedi films, before The Force Awakens. And also, it doesn't make any sense that when you consider the age we're in, the Netflix age, the binge watching age, where people take a whole season of a show and watch it within a week. I mean to tell me, people can sit there and watch episode after episode, season after season on things like Netflix, things of Hulu and that nature, and don't get tired of it. But they get tired of Star Wars, one of the greatest, most imaginative franchises possible. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. When people were watching Cobra Kai, what did they say? They wanted season 2 the same day. Everybody watched it in a day or in 2 days. My case was 2 days. But they wanted more. And that's kind of what you expect from Star Wars. You should always be left wanting more. And I don't believe that people are fatigued of Star Wars. They're fatigued of Disney Star Wars. And when I say Disney Star Wars, it's basically the higher-ups at Lucasfilm. Disney is only a figurehead because they're the ones paying the bills the same way as they are for Marvel. Why is Marvel doing so much better? Because Marvel has Kevin Feige, Lucasfilm has Kathleen Kennedy. So basically, number 1, Star Wars fatigue. Wrong answer. All right, let's take a look at what the second excuse is. The second excuse, Solo Star Wars story was the film nobody wanted. Nobody wanted this film. Nobody wanted to see it. All right, I guess you're forgetting that Han Solo is probably in the top 3 most popular characters in Star Wars. I would argue, I don't know who else would top him. I mean, maybe Darth Vader, maybe Obi-Wan. I'm not sure who would be more popular than Han Solo. Han Solo is the most popular character, and the character has an interesting history, and he's tied to all different characters. Like we were just saying about Boba Fett and in the proposed Boba Fett solo. Boba Fett is only really tied to Jabba the Hutt. If you're going to have any kind of interesting connectivity with him, you connect him to Jabba the Hutt. Maybe Jabba sends him out on a mission of some sort. That's it. But with Han Solo, you've got a lot of interesting characters for him to interact with. He can interact with Jabba the Hutt. He can interact with Boba Fett. He can interact with Lando Calrissian. He can interact with Chewbacca, of course, because Chewbacca's a sidekick. There really isn't a lack of tools to tell the story with. There is not a lack of history that you can play with. We hear so much history, particularly in The Empire Strikes Back, but in all 3 of the movies. I mean, to see how he becomes basically a jaded space jockey. We only touched the surface of that in Solo, and I liked Solo. I mean, when I'm doing a video, unlike a lot of people who are just doing it to dance on the grave of this film, I'm trying to point out why it failed and why they need to move away from some of the things they've been doing and not just point fingers of blame and excuses that really don't amount to anything. So, number 2, Han Solo, the film nobody wanted. Not a good excuse. Again, Han Solo's popular. You got a great toy box there to play with. There's no reason it shouldn't have been a success. Everybody loves Han Solo. Everybody loves Star Wars. All right, number 3. It came out in May, too close to The Last Jedi, and Christmas is the go-to time for a Star Wars movie. Again, that's ridiculous. Star Wars came out in May for the first, I don't know, 20 years of its existence. May is traditionally the best time for Star Wars movies. The time everybody ever went to see a Star Wars movie was always in May. Only when Disney bought Lucasfilm and they started putting Star Wars in December was because, of course, the Marvel movies had taken residence in May in the Memorial Day selection. So they had to move them somewhere else. And the next best place they could figure to find them where they wouldn't compete with their own film was in December. So, and I've actually argued with people about this on Twitter because it makes no sense to me. Christmas has never been traditionally a Star Wars month. I mean, it has been for a couple of movies, but that shouldn't make the reason for a failure of the film. You should be able to put a Star Wars movie out in any month conceivably in the entire year and still have it be successful. So that's bogus. That's a bogus excuse. Number 4, crowded theaters. Now, they had too much competition between Avengers, Infinity War, Deadpool 2, and they couldn't find their slice of the action. That's BS. Bologna sandwiches. First off, Avengers Infinity War was already out a month, and it did all the business it was going to do, and yeah, it probably still drew some fans back for the 7th or 8th viewing, but let's face it, everybody that was going to see Infinity War already had their chance to see Infinity War multiple times. And Deadpool 2 is an R-rated comedy. Now, no kids are going to go see that, or at least if you have if you have a responsible parent, they're not going to see that. But it's not going to be, or it should not be doing the same business as Star Wars. Star Wars makes Star Wars money. Deadpool will be making Deadpool R-rated money. And the problem with this is that people don't understand. Star Wars is the big dog. Films move their release dates for fear of Star Wars, not vice versa. Star Wars doesn't move their release dates because they're afraid they're not going to get any business. That's what everybody else does to Star Wars. Star Wars is the premier franchise. Let's not forget that. That's the reason why a lot of people are beating up the film over its underperforming because, even the most milquetoast Star Wars film should, make 700 million, and it's probably not on track to make that. If it does, it'll just barely make it. So no seat in the theaters because of crowded films surrounding it. That's ridiculous as well. Okay, let's move on here. Number 5. I wish I had 10 because this could be a top 10, but no, there's only 9. Number 5, Lord and Miller got a raw deal. Now, this suggests that Lord and Miller have as big a following as Zack Snyder, who, a lot of Zack Snyder's acolytes stood away from Justice League because Zack Snyder wasn't getting full control over the film, and his say was not being met because it was given to Joss Whedon because supposedly, at least, Zack felt that personal problems were family problems were something that was a priority to him. So Lord and Miller got canned, and you know the story. Ron Howard got brought in, sort of a safe choice to take over, and he basically took one for the team. You can't tell me that, Lucasfilm knew this film was going to underperform. They knew because they knew what the previous film was, but we'll get to that in a moment. It's similar to the way Joss Whedon took one for the team for Justice League. I think they knew right off the bat that they really weren't going to turn to Joss Whedon for much more than this, but he was competent enough to, nurse the film into existence. Now, honestly, from all accounts, Lord and Miller were making a slapstick comedy. They're famous for doing Lego Batman and a couple of other things that I'm not familiar with. But from what I understand, they wanted to make it sort of a comedy, possibly like Guardians of the Galaxy-esque. And it was bordering on parody. That was sort of the complaints that reports were saying. Now, we already had enough of that in The Last Jedi, where that, to me, that film was bordering on parody when you see Luke Skywalker throwing the lightsaber over his shoulder and milking an alien walrus. That stuff, that's parody. And I think they were pretty, astute enough to not let this become too slapstick, too Guardians of the Galaxy. And so I think that Lord and Miller leaving was not a bad thing. So Lord and Miller getting the shaft. No, that's not the answer either. Okay, let's take a look at the next one here. What is this? Alden Ehrenreich is a bad choice. Is Alden Ehrenreich a bad choice as Han Solo? Well, let's face it, you can't please anybody. Nobody could step into Harrison Ford's boots and be Harrison Ford. Nobody was going to do it. Nobody was good enough. I mean, you could give a decent impression of Harrison Ford as a young man, but that does not, you know, take on a life of its own as an actor. Now, if Alden gave too close of an impression, he'd be criticized for not making the role his own. If he strayed too far away from Ford's imprint on the character, they'd say he couldn't capture Ford's charm. So it's basically a thankless role. I think he did a fine job in what was a thankless situation. I think when you put Alden up against his peers playing previously established iconic characters, like Chris Pine playing Kirk, or Sean Patrick Flannery playing Indiana Jones, he more than makes the grade. Because as good an actor as Pine is, he didn't feel like Captain Kirk all the time. He felt like Captain Kirk maybe 10% of those movies. And Sean Patrick Flannery, I honestly liked him as young Indiana Jones when they did the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. But honestly, did he have anything in common with Harrison Ford? No. When you put Alden Ehrenreich on that same plateau, against his peers, I would say Alden got Ford probably about 35% of the time. Let's say, 30 to 35% of the time. So that's not a bad average when you're trying to emulate an iconic character. So blaming Alden on this one, I don't get it. Nah, it's not his fault. It has nothing to do with him. All right, this one, probably the most ridiculous one. It doesn't even deserve to be mentioned because it's so absurd. But number 7, films headed by straight white men are box office poison. Okay, that's ridiculous. I'm not even going to move on. I'm not even going to entertain that one. I got to move on from that one because that's ridiculous. All right. What are we on? Number 8. Number 8. People are getting tired of Star Wars getting the SJW treatment. All right, so actually we've got one here that does kind of ring true. Star Wars has gotten the SJW treatment since it's been taken over by Lucasfilm. Now, we all knew this was going to happen. They were going to do the cram for diversity, and of course, I've got to always, in case you're 3 years old, I've got to specify that diversity is not a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is not something that should be the single most important aspect of putting a movie or story or production together. That's something you do after the fact, when you've got a story, when you've got, the world ready to play. Now, getting a character like L3, who was droids' rights and struck a chord that was too real world. And that was never something that Star Wars was all about. Star Wars was always the escapist fantasy. And having things about droid rights and having the feminist girl power stuff in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, and reports of Lando being Pan just before the film was to release, which didn't turn out to be this big issue in the movie, but was still enough to sort of put a taint on Lando's character. It didn't endear fans to them. All this stuff doesn't endear fans to them. And they don't seem to understand that. They don't seem to understand that when you push more of this 2018 social political garbage in your face, you're not going to get a good reaction from people who simply want to see a good Star Wars movie without all the SJW politics and virtue signaling and interrupting their escapist entertainment for it. It's ridiculous to try to force that stuff in it. But, we've seen it happen before. It happened with Gamergate, which I'm not really a gamer, so I really I was sitting out on that one. It happened with Comicsgate, and again, I was a passive uh, dissenter with that one because I really haven't read comics in a long time because they were getting so bad. Starting in like the mid '90s, it got worse and worse. But now that it's happening in Star Wars, a lot of people are sitting up and taking note that why are we putting so much attention on the SJW politics? Why are we putting so much attention on all this virtue signaling crap when all we want to do is see a good movie? So that one does have merit. Let's call that one what it is. All right, and the final one, number 9, The Last Jedi left a very bad taste in fans' mouths, leading to a boycott. Again, there is some truth to this one. Of course, The Last Jedi wasn't very well received, although it does have its fans. And of course, again, I got to make the statement that if you like The Last Jedi, nothing wrong with that. I've got nothing against you for liking it. It's fine. It is what it is. But the fact is that it did lead so many fans to become disenfranchised with the franchise that they felt so strongly about this that they wanted to have a boycott of the next film. And that is basically why Solo is suffering, because a lot of people just wanted to boycott this one, clear out, to send a strong message to the higher ups at Lucasfilm, to Kathleen Kennedy, that this train is on the wrong tracks. They're going in the wrong direction here, and we really need to shape up. Now, again, I feel bad for it because I don't think Solo is the film that needed to be the scapegoat for Kennedy's mismanagement. But, you know, people weren't going to wait around for episode 9, and it's kind of a strategic thing with Disney, I think, where they put Solo out so early after The Last Jedi so that it could take the brunt of all of this criticism and complaint, leaving episode 9 free and clear for a full year and a half before they have to listen to any criticism again. So it makes sense. It's the strategic thing to do, I think, to try to get the furor over with fast, and hopefully in the intervening over a year, well, probably a year at least until we get some, production talk about it again. Will they with the trailer and they start hyping up the movie? So it's about a year. It's pretty much the same thing that Warner Brothers did with Aquaman. Now, Justice League came out and they knew they were just giving it the bum's rush. They were giving it the bum's rush. They're just putting it out in theaters, saying, "Look, we know that we kind of hacked it up and did the best we could with a sinking ship, but we'll take the brunt of it, and then you just forget about it when Aquaman comes out, and we'll carry on." Kind of the same thing we're seeing here: mismanagement, woeful mismanagement by Kathleen Kennedy, to the point where now even some of her staunchest supporters are beginning to throw her under the bus. Uh, she's failed to make good on her promise when Lucas left her in charge of Lucasfilm of safeguarding these beloved characters. And, fans are being left as an afterthought when the films are being developed. It's not about what will appeal to the fans, like Kevin Feige's outlook when they're doing Marvel films. It's you can't have fans involved in the consideration when you're trying to busy to virtue signal and get your SJW politics out. And of course, any criticisms they receive from fans are shouted down by the typical SJW chorus of "you must be sexist, racist, homophobic." Politics and diversity had its place in Lucas's Star Wars, but not at the expense of the story. And that's kind of the problem they're facing, that not enough people are in the production side of this are worried about. They're not worried about the story. They're basically just trying to get their politics in it. And it's just a very sad state of affairs. Let's put it that way. So once again, basically the reasons why the Solo Star Wars story failed financially, at least at the box office, is because came after The Last Jedi. it was basically the sacrificial lamb to try to throw people's, disgust with The Last Jedi onto a pretty benign target, because now they could use the excuses of, well, they could use all the excuses that I've just listed, but they could use the excuses of it was a straight white man's film that nobody liked. Everybody wants to see the feminist trappings of Rey in Episode 9, and they can complain about nobody wanted to see a Han Solo film, which is ridiculous because Han Solo is one of the most beloved characters in the franchise with a lot of interesting stories to tell. So, again, that's where it's at. Thank you for joining me once again. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think these are the reasons why Solo underperformed at the box office? Let me know what you think. And let's see, we'll be with you again probably Wednesday. I think we're probably not going to have another news roundup, and there's no more comic This Week in Comic Television. We're probably not going to do a show on. No, we might do a show on Saturday still, because the show I got a show on Sunday, so we'll probably do a show on Wednesday, and we will ask you what you think about Star Wars. We have another Star Wars topic on Wednesday, so make sure you click the link in the description and let me know what you think in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications, which is what everybody tells you to do, even though I don't think I've ever hit a bell for notifications. I just usually type in whatever I want to see if it didn't come up on my landing page there, and just see if any new videos are out from my subscriptions. All right, so thank you for joining me once again, and always remember, keep that flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.